Halloween 7. Well, not Halloween 7. Halloween H20 is the 7th installment, but we had to call it Halloween Water because we had to get scientific with it. So yeah, we have another film that is retconning past films that happened in the past. In this case, 4, 5, and 6 did not happen. So it's a direct almost sequel. I don't remember exactly what, but I just know that somebody from Scream was involved in this film, and you could tell, I mean, everything from the tone of this movie. This movie starts off with an opening kill, just like Scream does. The music, the suspense music that goes on throughout the whole movie is very much Scream-esque type. We don't really have the usual Halloween music, piano soundtrack that we have throughout the whole film. And of course, the member berries. I mean, we gotta have the member berries because it's like, it's trying to establish, hey, you know what? We did this franchise wrong, so let's go back and remember what made it great. So the film starts off with an opening kill. Michael ends up finding the nurse. I forgot what her name is, but she's the nurse that was with Dr. Loomis on that very first night 20 years ago. She's his nurse because, you know, he's old and she's ended up taking care of him. But then I'm like, wait, I thought they were like the same age, so shouldn't they both be like in bed, almost like dying? So Michael finds the nurse, he finds the files on Laurie, he kills her. Police arrive way too late, of course, and then when they do arrive, it's weird funny how they don't even see Michael driving off, and he's in a muscle car. He's in this Gran Torino looking muscle car, and then it's so quiet. As we see how the obsession of Dr. Loomis, and we get all his famous speeches in a voiceover. It doesn't really sound like him. I think it's somebody else, but we hear everything that he's ever said in the past films. Kind of paying homage to Donald Pleasance, who sadly passed away. But then we learn that Laurie ended up faking her death in order to protect herself and to protect her son. Yeah, she has a son now. It's not Jamie, so Jamie ended up getting a sex change. Oh yeah, and this movie's not in Haddonfield either. It's in California. It's in Northern California, I think. And I'm like, okay, Michael, I was cool with you doing your thing in Haddonfield, but you really have to come to my state? I don't feel safe anymore. Laurie changed her name. Laurie ended up moving to Cali, and she's like the head man. There's no wonder she sees Michael out the window. And of course, what would a horror movie be without the comic relief being the black guy and then playing the dumb security guard? I mean, it's always a trope in horror movies. Why they always gotta do that to people? And it's played none other than by LL Cool J, who plays a dumb security guard who is trying to be a poetic writer or something. He sucks at it. One thing I really do like is that it's 20 years later. In order to establish that, they make Laurie as a very overprotective mom. She's not letting her boy John go on this trip to Yosemite with the school because she's very overprotective. She won't really let him go out. And we see that tension between son and mom as if they're arguing. And there's this scene where John's like, you know what, Mom, I can't take this anymore. I can't live under your shadow. Like, don't put it on me just because you have a crappy history. It doesn't mean that I have to go through it. And I really like that because it shows that everything that Laurie has been through, she's unconsciously putting it on her son, and he's just done with it. And it shows how much Laurie, the years have gone, but she hasn't really grown. She hasn't really overcame that trauma. And of course, going 20 years without really telling people who you really are, and especially having to form some sort of relationship with a guy. And I know as a human, she couldn't take that no more, so she ends up falling in love, or she's dating one of the counselors from the school. One thing I did find weird is that how Laurie suspects that something's going on. It just somehow happened just because the counselor that she's dating asked her, hey, how long ago was this? How old were you? And she's like, oh yeah, I was 17. But she says that while looking at a birthday card that her son got from his dad, and it's his 17th birthday. So just because it's coincidentally the same age, he's the same age as she was when these events first happened, she's like, oh shoot, I gotta check on John, I gotta check on my boy. And when she does check up on him, she realizes that he didn't go on this trip that he was supposed to, that she allowed him to go, but he just stayed because he wanted to stay and drink with his friends. But I'm like, okay, Laurie could have discovered that some other way instead of just randomly having some sort of superstition of, oh shoot, yeah, he's the same age as I was, and it's Halloween night. Eventually Michael makes his way into the school, on campus, and once the whole killing starts, then, you know, it starts to pick up. Not that it's slow in a bad way. I mean, it really does. It builds up that suspense and that 90s cheese type of way with all the jump scares and all that. It feels very much like Scream, as I mentioned before. Then the very first scene when Michael is chasing John and his girl, and then they make it into the gate. They get through this gate, but then his girl drops the key somewhere, and Michael's just he stucks his hand in there and trying to like slash away. And I'm like, dude, you have the keys on the floor. After finally Michael gets his brain together and getting the keys, and then he makes it through the gate where they shut the door and Laurie is on the other side, and then she's like, oh shoot. And it's like a very iconic shot of the movie that a lot of people remember as her in shock, and they're just very face to face looking through this glass. Then here is when we see the shadow of someone walking, and then Laurie's boyfriend ends up shooting him, and then we think it's Michael, but no, it ends up being LL Cool J. And of course, man, why does the black guy have to shoot? Why do you have to shoot the one black guy in this whole movie? I really do like the ending where it's a showdown between Michael and Laurie, and especially the scene where which table she's under. He's flipping tables over, knocking chairs over. Laurie's trying to play mind games, trying to make him think that she's on some other table, and it was just really cool to see. And then we all think he's dead, but then Laurie's just not so sure. She's like, you know what, this guy always ends up coming back to life, so let me make sure that he's actually dead. So she takes it upon herself, and she puts Michael in a van. She drives off and just decides to run the van off a cliff, and you know, Michael's pinned between the van and a tree, and then he starts like, he wakes up and he's like, oh, where am I? And I'm like, Michael, quit acting stupid, you're done. And then he tries to be all sympathetic by saying, oh, sister, I love you, please help me. Laurie's not having it and just chops his head off, and then literally the movie ends right there. Almost as if the studio was like, okay, people, this is the end right here. We are sorry. You know what? We know that this franchise got messed over, but this is why we did this film, so that way it could put it to rest. Michael's dead, and it's done, or so we thought. In the end, Halloween H20, it's a movie that I enjoy more than the Thorn trilogy, as people like to call it. And I think a big part of that is because we do have Jamie Lee Curtis back, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis that makes this franchise other than Michael Myers. I mean, she's just the one that we relate to. She's the one protagonist that really we care about. Like, we don't care about Rachel, we didn't care about Jamie. It doesn't really feel like a Halloween movie unless it's with Jamie Lee Curtis. It's just undeniable. Is it cheesy? Yeah, in some way. It does feel very much like Scream. But on the upside, it feels refreshing in a way because of the tone that it gave this movie. And the movie really didn't go and try and go back to its roots. That's why even the settings in California were no longer in Haddonfield. It didn't have to be some night where somebody had to babysit, kids are involved. I mean, sure, we do have some stupid teenagers, but you know, it's not like overdoing it. And the fact that it has that 90s horror slasher nostalgia, that nostalgia factor is just, you know, like the cherry on top. But in the end, I will say that Halloween H20, Halloween Water, is definitely a collectible for me. Alright, so I want to know from you guys, Halloween H20, whatever your thoughts are, go ahead and drop them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, smash that like button, and remember to keep watching me, keep watching movies.